Halo Episode 5 review I've reviewed the others. There's a link to the playlist down in the description below. Now, every episode of Halo has seemingly been worse than the one before. We've had a quality bar that kept on lowering, but no matter how low it got, the next episode somehow managed to limbo underneath it, to the point where I felt like I had to begin to dig into the earth just so I could physically make it fit. The issue is, at this point, it kind of feels like I've dug so far down through the center of the earth, I've ended up on Australia on the other side, and in an island paradise, because the last 10 minutes of this episode actually felt pretty good. The thing is, the show seems to have damaged my sense of taste, and I'm not sure whether the last 10 minutes is actually good, or just in comparison to all of the rest, I was in so much pain going through the molten core that actually just coming out anywhere feels interesting. Also, this episode was 20 minutes shorter than all the others, so it might just be that because I had more sanity left, overall, I feel a lot better off for it. But as I do these reviews, I have to go through it a second time, and I look at it in more detail, and that's when I see a lot of the problems. So as far as I'm concerned, by the time I get to the end of this review, I may have completely changed my opinion. Because at the moment, I'm standing in Australia, and I may just not have realised yet that every single animal I see wants to kill me. So join me on a journey of discovery to the end, because I'm not sure at the moment what I actually think of the end of the episode. I just know that the previous 30 minutes, it's complete and utter trash. We start the episode with a flashback, because why would it ever be interesting? And she says, oh, these children, they have a nature-based learning, which as far as I can tell seems to just be enforced child labour. But as I said previously, what's the point of having kids if you can't put them to work? The weirdest part is she said the colonial insurrectionists touched everyone, even here, and I'm like, I don't even understand how that can happen. You're on a dead planet on your own. There is none of them over there. And by definition, they want the independence of their own planet. We're about 10 seconds into the episode. Plot already doesn't make sense. But Halsey's here and she wants to set up a family. It's a bit late for that, love. But apparently they let the kids have fun. And their definition of fun is letting the kids fight in the air with no safety measures at a lethal height. Gotta say, it's pretty based. So obviously one of the kids falls and she fakes as if she cares. They all fake as if they care. If you let a load of kids in the air with no safety ropes at that age, that's going to happen all the time. There's no way it'd be that rare that you could care that much about it. It'd just be like, oh, Timmy's fallen again. Time to pop out another one, Martha. You need a reproduction rate of about 25 to every 2 adults just to replace the kids. And the big twist of the piece is that this guy's here, which I thought was obvious. I didn't know where this was meant to be a twist. I just assumed everyone in the UNSC was in on it. You telling me that Master Chief can't work out if Halsey betrayed him, then the entire UNSC betrayed him? The answer is yes, he is that stupid. But we're on the same planet, and you see this ship land, and this is the start of the rest of the episode. Bad green screen effects. But as I've said, I'm very lenient on CGI effects, especially when it comes to TV shows, and when pausing things. But we've got whiny scientist I still don't know her name of, and she still looks miserable with a face like a slapped arse, because that's her main expression in life. We've also got emotional Type B Spartan, who's still got the gun oil gunk in her hair, which presumably has been in for days now as they've travelled through space. I don't know why the other Spartans aren't calling her a dirty cow. I mean, just seriously, and not in a good way, not even in a good way. But of course we've got to have the eye-to-eye contact, just so everybody knows that we're baiting. Also, that's one hell of a red streak in her hair. That is a lot of gunk. This is the first episode where I see they've spent some of their budget on it because it's got more than 2 actors in the entire show. But he's talking to whiny scientist, and apparently Halsey doesn't know how to get the actual device they found in the last episode out of the rock. My question is, why do you want to? At this point, you don't know if it's got anything to do with the cave. It might plug into some bigger computer as part of the room, but instead, no, we just see something sticking out of the earth and we immediately want to cut it off. We also get to tell whiny woman in STEM, "Oh, you're so amazing, and now we give you an opportunity to prove it." I think it's time we show everyone what you can do. I mean, according to her episode 2, she invented literally every technology the UNSC has ever used. But instead we get Cook, oh yeah, I am amazing, I know I'm amazing, and I'm gonna show everyone how amazing I am. Oh, I can't stand it, I can't stand it. Kinda looks like an RTS game. I love that you've got spaceships that can fly and hover, and yet you still use a crane to pull this out. So Master Chief's looking at the artifact, and Cortana tells him this one produces more energy than the other one, which isn't surprising given its size. Women A only thinking about one thing. At this point, I'm just glad he's got his helmet on. Honestly, it's the best acting he's ever done. And Halsey's like, John, there's a big safety issue for you and the others. You can't touch it. He's touched it before as a kid. He'll be fine. I don't know what the fuss is about. And he doesn't say anything, and he doesn't take his helmet on. Honestly, it's the best acting he's ever done. I'm already annoyed. You see, if you shave both sides of your hair off, you become doubly powerful. And she's already annoyed with him, even though he's just been trying to help her. Because this is a type B who just thinks that everyone lives to serve her. This guy's got scars all the way up his arms, and it just looks like someone's put silicone in for muscle. But they're trapped in the desert, and the bike he stole doesn't work. And she's already being sarcastic with him, even though he's only ever tried to help her. Because she's like, well, it's broken, now what? We'll be back on the road in the morning. And she just goes sarcastic, really? Well, it looks like we're not going anywhere, because you can't even fix this. Oh! At this point, I'd just ditch her in the desert. Which, to his credit, he does. He handcuffs her the bike and walks off. She's like, oh, you can't do this. It's like, I'm surprised no one's done it to you before, love. Because she wanted to go off and play the rebel, and he was just like, I'm taking you back to base. So unfortunately, he's doing this to protect her. Well, I say protect her, he is at least going to make her work for him until she pays off the ship. Although, let's be honest, he lost that over his own stupidity. I still don't know why he didn't stop the people taking it in the first place. And she's like, oh, well, what am I supposed to do here? And I'm like, well, hopefully dehydrate into a slow and agonizing death. That's a show I'd watch. And because she's useless and angry and crap at literally everything, she yeets her water bottle at the bike. So now she can't reach her water bottle. She is the worst, most annoying character of any show I've ever seen. And for some reason, she's angry and going, ah, 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 and it just comes across as an angry temper tantrum from a 2-year-old. Next up, 2 women in STEM and 1 guy who's doing squats, presumably because the next episode is going to get his arse out in front of all the various different Halsey clones in his basement. And they're talking about how they're going to cut it out because they could see the device through the crystal. But if I was them, I'd dig down underneath it and take the entire plinth with me. And honestly, as the episode shows later on, I'm vastly more intelligent than the 2 women in STEM, as you'd expect. And she says to Halsey, I'd love to do some tests on it, and Halsey just blanks her. I'm like, yeah, love, I'd love to mess about in a Ferrari, but I can't drive and you can't do science, so it's probably a waste of time for both of us to attempt either. I just keep getting Starship Troopers vibes. Do you remember in other videos when I said the writers really think they've written something deep and complicated, when really it's just as shallow as a duck's backside? Here we go, boys. Welcome to the guy who should have been Master Chief and the woman who can't even wash her hair. And she's like, do you ever wonder what the Covenant wants? It's like, I don't know, they seem to be glassing your planets. I assume they want to glass you out of existence. And she's talking like a 5-year-old. What do they want? And he's answering, and she's like, yeah, but why? And he answers her, and she goes, yeah, but why? And he answers her, yeah, but why? Oh, and she thinks she's being really clever when she's going, why? Oh, it's like a little bird in a nest. Yeah, feed me. And this guy's amazing. He's just like, they want to kill us. They want that artifact. He's to the point, he's efficient, and he's blunt. He's the perfect soldier. And she's like, yeah, but why? It's not your job to even ask. It's her job to wonder how many bullets it will take to shoot him in the face. That's it. So the guy's like, no, I don't wonder why. And she's like, yeah, but do you ever wonder why you don't wonder why? And she thinks that's really insightful and deep, and it just isn't. Oh, it's awful. Do you ever wonder why you don't wonder? No. But this guy has the best response. It's just like, I think that gun oil in your hair sunk through to your brain. And actually, I think it has as well. I've also wondered this about hair dye for a long time because there seems to be a strong correlation. And he even says, I don't know why you're asking me dumbass questions like that. And she's got this smug look as if, oh, it's just because I'm more amazing than you now. I've taken that thing out my back. I'm far better than you are. Oh, you're awful. Everything about you is awful. Then her chin recedes like a tortoise. Oh, I've been told. But here is a rare sight of Master Chief with his helmet on. Oh, it's amazing. But Master Chief zooms in and he noticed the gun oil gunk in her hair. And Cortana's going, oh, look, I noticed that too. That's a nice colour on her. And that's not how a type B AI would respond at all. She'd take one look at that and go, I don't know why she's got gun oil in her hair, the skanky cow. But Master Chief decides to immediately walk over there and pull her aside. And he demands she takes off her helmet because apparently this is just a running joke now. All Spartans should just take their helmet off at all times. And he immediately goes, when did you remove your pellet? And if he can work that out by seeing her hair, why has nobody else? And she starts acting like a complete psychopath, as you can see. Possible thumbnail number 1. And she starts going complete psychopath. Oh, the things I can see, it's amazing. I've never felt like this before. Like, she's verging on hysterical at this point. I'm beginning to agree with all the nutters. Maybe saying smile more wasn't a good suggestion. And Master Chief's just like, you're clearly insane. I can't clear you for combat when you're like this. She's like, why? You're distracted. But I'm awake. Yes. He's like, you're awake too. This is Master Chief and a woman talking about how woke they are. Hi, I'm Disparu. I watch Halo. And that's why I drink. But he basically says you're emotionally compromised, and so I'm grounding you and you can't go back to duty. And she's just like, well, what about you? I don't know. He's not going around grinning like a complete psychopath. This man has managed to go through 4.5 episodes without pulling a single expression. I think he's got it nailed. This guy has a less emotive range than his helmet does. Whereas she proved herself to be overly emotional and completely out of control. Except that's exactly what the show's trying to suggest is a bad thing. I'm pretty sure they're going for the storyline of, women are always discriminated against at work because they're deemed to be overly emotional, whereas men get away with it. But all they've actually shown is that the man can handle it, whereas she's completely losing her mind. So after discussing how woke they are, all they did is manage to prove the exact opposite point than they were intending to during the entire scene. If you think watching Halo's bad, you should try watching it twice. And Cortana's just like, she's right, you're compromised as well and haven't been tested in battle. And I challenge anyone to go through the last scene and think that both of those people are equally ready for battle. One of them has a face like a block of wood, the other one has a face like the Joker. Cortana's meant to be super intelligent, comes across as completely mentally deficient. Although at this point, I'm just glad she's not trying to murder Master Chief. But Master Chief just tells her to stop talking because he can't hear herself think. And Cortana's like, well, I can, and you're not missing much. You've got the same brain! The only processing power you have is Master Chief's brain. If he's thick, so is Cortana! In fact, she's only in a tiny portion of his brain, which means she's worse. But we're back on Madrigal, and that's a Covenant ship. So, I do have a slight hope that actually they might take out Quan. They don't take out Quan. We're about to see Covenant elites take orders from her. I think this camera angle exists only to show how ridiculous it is that Covenant elites would ever take orders from her. But essentially, they're discussing the fact that the relic is no longer on Madrigal. And she says, I know it's not here. But then she says it used to be here. And so that should be enough to tell us where the next one is. I'm like, what? Because she tells him to keep looking. I'm like, we're looking for what, love? Maybe if we can see the indentation in the soil, we'll know where it's gone. As far as we know, she's the only one who can sense any of this radiating power, not the Covenant themselves. All they've got is a little glowing stick. So if anything, she's the one that should be looking for the radiating power, but she can't be bothered for some reason. Although I have to say, she does mimic Master Chief really well in this scene, where she has one expression. She's proven herself to be a really good actress in other scenes. I don't know why the direction in this scene was just, can you look gormless, please? So we're back at Quan throwing a 2-year-old temper tantrum, and that's basically what she does for the entire episode. Just starts screaming, oh, shut up! And she's there pushing the broken down motorbike across sand. Because she acts like a 2-year-old, and that's also her IQ. And obviously it falls over, so what does she do? She continues to throw a temper tantrum, and also thinks that somehow she can break metal handcuffs just by pulling on them. Unless your aim is to pull your hand off, that's not going to work. As you can see, the handcuffs are solid metal, and they are attached all the way down here to a very, very thick piece of metal. And remember that, because what follows is some of the most ridiculous television I've ever seen. Because she starts hitting the handcuffs with rocks. Except these rocks are made of sandstone, and they just keep breaking immediately the moment she hits anything with them. Of course, that doesn't stop her, because she just keeps picking up more and smashing them, achieving absolutely nothing. Who knew that incredibly fragile rocks weren't actually as strong as advanced futuristic metal alloys? And she keeps smashing the handcuffs and screaming. And smashing and screaming. And I'm pretty sure this is meant to show Quan's so determined when she's just the most annoying character in the entire show, and she's getting worse. But somehow, after blindly smashing rocks on the handcuffs for a bit, she breaks it. But she breaks it on the big, thick piece of metal on the motorbike. So rather than breaking it on the links of the handcuffs or smashing open the lock in some way, she instead breaks the most toughest part of the entire thing. Normally it's the weakest link in the chain that breaks, but in Halo, Quan just breaks the strongest one because she can, because she is that amazing. Luckily, now she's just still trapped in the middle of the desert with no transport. And she runs off. Hopefully that's the last we ever see of her. Unfortunately, I'm not that lucky. But Master Chief's admitting that he's had all these childhood memories of Halsey with his parents. And he's telling them to the guy who was there at the time. What a surprise. Your main military scientist and your main military leader were both in on actually creating you. Their main military asset. Maybe Cortana was right and he doesn't think at all. Or maybe that was just the writers. And the dude's just like, yes, Master Chief, I'll look into that personally, when really he must be thinking, all of that effort we spent to actually increase your brain power, Master Chief, obviously failed. Because it just seems like Master Chief tried to put 2 and 2 together and got confused. Because he thanks him and walks off. I'm like, you are an idiot. But they're having a discussion about what to do about John now he's admitted that he's got all those memories back. And she's saying, I thought Cortana was supposed to stop all of this. And Elsie's like, yeah, it's under control. Besides, these memories you call so dangerous are exactly why we're here on this planet. But we're back again with something they think is so deep and complicated. Oh, the Machiavellian nature of it all. When really it's just like 3-year-olds throwing their excrement at each other. Because Boss Lady tells Halsey, I'm cutting you off. And Halsey's like, oh, I wouldn't do that. If you cut me off, I'll have to tell our boss and he'll just need a scapegoat. What do you mean he'll need a scapegoat? Surely you're not blackmailing me. And she's like, oh, I'm just telling you what he'd do. And she just lets Halsey off. It's that simple. She has no counterstroke and no response. Oh, Halsey said she'd tell her boss, and that means I'd lose. I mean, the simple fact that this woman who's supposed to be the boss couldn't even stitch up Halsey in this response when it's completely Halsey's fault, every single thing that's ever happened, mean that she would never have risen to that position in the first place. If she's that easy to manipulate and blackmail, then quite frankly, she deserves to lose a job. And I'm pretty sure this was meant to be some really clever, intelligent, deft political maneuvering, and it was awful. So instead, she just tells Halsey to handle it. You could have cut that entire scene and the show would have just been better for it. I can't imagine writing that and being proud of my own work. I really couldn't. So for some reason, rather than just getting jackhammers and going through the stone underneath the item and lifting it all up, we're going to take a laser and destroy the entire crystal. Mind you, it is creepy Halsey clone scientists doing it, so nothing surprises me at this point. We're going to start breaking an advanced alien crystal that we don't know what it does with a laser beam. What could possibly go wrong? I tell you what, I'm definitely going to be 2 inches away from the blast area as it fires. We can at least get the laser refracting into his eyeballs or something, but the moment the crystal breaks, it shrieks and blasts a huge wave of air out the top. This immediately shatters the crane, even though all of the far more fragile and softer humans are all fine and just holding their ears a bit, including the guy right next to the blast site. This thing blew up a crane, but he's fine. And as the sound's going, the entire thing starts to shatter and break. And the only way this guy gets through the entire pain is thinking of the 500 Halseys tied to his radiator in his basement. Yeah, if only I can be with you one more time. So the woman in STEM is on her ship, hears the sound, and for some reason wants to look at the hologram closer. It's a hologram. It's got nothing to do with the item down there. And for some reason, that shattering sends a signal to Madrigal, which all the Covenant pick up, and then the Blessed One touches a rock and she magically knows where the other planet is. Possible thumbnail number 3. And the only explanation for how this all works is the plot demands it. They break crystal, woman on different planet magically knows. Quite frankly, I'm struggling to keep up. That's the kind of plot you have to watch twice just so you can grasp all the nuance. There's so many possible thumbnails. But the crystal starts shattering, and while everyone else is running away from it, Master Chief is running to it and doesn't seem that bothered by it. And just as he reaches it, the entire crystal shatters, which apparently they modeled perfectly, even though they had no idea what it looked like apart from Master Chief going, it went around the other object. And if you replace Master Chief with Halsey, then this is that scientist's perfect dream. Now that device has blown up a crane, hurt loads of people, and shattered everywhere. So what does Master Chief do? He takes his helmet off. Definitely no need for head protection here, as it starts to glow and could possibly do anything, like spontaneously explode. But we need his helmet off, because we have to see his incredibly expressive face. It's like someone forgot to tell him that the cameras actually started rolling. It's just like, oh yeah, I've got some steak in the fridge. So woman in STEM tries to sound intelligent while actually knowing literally nothing. She comes up with the idea that it was a signal that was either communicating or a warning. It was sent to someone or something, and it's possible that the artifact isn't 2 halves of the same weapon, but some other kind of device altogether. Her genius conclusion is basically, it's a thing which does a thing and we don't know what it is, but it's probably something, maybe. Gotta say, you're not really selling me women in STEM with this character. And she immediately gets told she's taken off the project. And she's stunned. I mean, with conclusions like, it's a thing that exists that does something. Honestly, I don't know how you ever became a scientist in the first place, let alone rose to the top of the UNSC. Why am I being taken off the project? I don't know, maybe it's because you're completely useless at it. And he says, I hear you've made great advancements with linguistic research. Yes, she came to the conclusion that if you point a pistol at someone, they'll go, Glock 47, and just say the name of the weapon. Yeah, that happens all the time. She's the kind of person that when Descartes was saying, I think, therefore she am, she's going, I don't even know if I exist. And she starts accusing him of being blackmailed as well now, and it's like, oh, maybe it's just because you're awful at your job. Why can't you just realise that you're absolutely awful at everything you've ever done in the entire show? Oh, there's a screenshot. Possible thumbnail number 47. But Master Chief sees the head military scientist and head military officer talking to each other, and somehow puts 1 and 1 together, but accidentally ends up at 4. And he starts demanding from Cortana records about the Spartan program. She's like, I don't have any. He's like, but you've got every record that the UNSC has ever amassed. And she just keeps saying, I've got no records of your adoption. And he starts marching towards the device, demanding records of the other Spartans, who also don't have any records. At this point, I'm wondering how Cortana can have these records stored in her chip, when the only computer she has access to is his own brain. So presumably, unless every single UNSC record has been downloaded into his head, I don't know how she's accessing any of it. Is she Wi-Fi? And if she is Wi-Fi, what happens when he's not near any UNSC ship? But either way, he touches the massive device, and we're back in the ever-loving memories that have been so annoying for the entire series. But we really like doing them because they're always blurred and very, very cheap. But basically, he sees himself being kidnapped. And I don't know how this is a memory because it's in third person. This guy has memories of a camera outside his own face. And he realizes that Halsey actually kidnapped him. That's right, we found the most advanced alien technology the UNSC has ever discovered, and the only thing it did is that give this guy a memory of his childhood. Congratulations. But Halsey comes in and finds him on the floor. And he is not happy. Luckily, though, doesn't show in his face, because he only ever has one expression. He's essentially like the Hulk. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry, except you'll never know when he is. And Halsey's just trying to talk him down. Oh, yeah, ignore that. We just need to get back with the artifact. Remember, this is his angry face. Because immediately after that expression, he just starts jumping at it. At least he's meant to be jumping at it, because from this screenshot, it looks like he's just fallen over. Which he does, because Cortana just breaks his mind. Dude goes down like holding the power button on a desktop PC. And Halsey is safe. Which makes the show, honestly, a lot less interesting. Because we know now that Master Chief can't do anything against the UNSC, because Cortana will just shut him down at a moment's notice. Congratulations on removing all of the risk and drama from your show. But essentially the pirate's gone away, got another car, and driven back to Quan. Only to find that she's gone missing. I mean, at this point, we can hope that she's wandered off into the desert and just dehydrated and we never see her again. But the dude starts wandering around and finds the bike, which for some reason has been moved to this pit. And as he approaches the bike, the earth starts to move. And Quan comes out of the dirt. No, I'm not joking. I really wish I was joking. Because then, the highly trained, advanced Spartan military operative gets taken down by a little tiny girl. Because she poked him with a stick. Which, if you remember in the last episode, all of those people at her father's wake were also getting poked with those sticks, and they were fine. But when Quan uses it, it gets superpowered, and she can poke a Spartan and he just falls over. What use is a Spartan in Spartan armor if he can get taken down with a little tiny stick that they have on some random planet somewhere? That armor's awful. Although this is worse when she pulls out a gun and goes to shoot him in the face. He's done nothing but help and protect her, and she's done nothing but cause him trouble, and yet she wants to shoot him for it. In the face. She might be the most evil character out of the entire series. Even in the end, he was only making her pay off her debt because she ran up her debt because she's completely and utterly useless at everything but thinks she's amazing. I despise her. I despise the entire character. I think this is meant to be a medic taking his pulse, but it just looks like they're choking him. That isn't how you take someone's pulse. And Cortana's just like, hello, I had to completely shut you down because you were threatening Dr. Halsey. And he's not even mad with Cortana. At this point, I'd be immediately having her surgically removed from my face. What do you mean you can just shut me down at a moment's notice? Get out of my head, you crazy cow. But at this point, the Covenant show up, and it's the only part of the episode that I liked. Although as this is going to be my second viewing, let's see if that stands by the end of it. You start with a load of ships coming in and basically bombing everything. And for some reason, the UNSC ship is already getting annihilated. So everyone knows that the Covenant are here for the artifact, but for some reason, the emotional Spartan runs in here and says that this ship needs to take off and leave. Because she's not just an emotional wreck with gun oil in her hair, she's now also a coward. The weird thing is the Type B in STEM says, no, I'm not going to leave. It's like, why? What do you think you're going to do here? You're not a military vehicle. So this woman's master plan is to just stay there on the surface, doing nothing, with no defenses or weapons, and be a sitting duck on the ground. You're not just bad at science, love, you're bad at military strategy as well. But we get these bombing runs, and there's like a chain gun shooting at him and stuff. I kind of expected better AA from the military than a chain gun, I've got to be honest. Like, don't you have some kind of rockets or tracking weaponry or something? No, we're just going to fire bullets at them? Okay. And one thing you do notice in the scene is there's a lot of running around and not firing. Still hasn't fired. He tells this soldier to run somewhere else. That soldier runs off and explodes. Still no one's fired. The ship comes over, crashes into a load of soldiers. None of the soldiers fired either. And in the background, you see the entire UNSC ship already collapse. Like, that thing went down in about, what, 15 seconds? And I have to say, it is extremely bad green screen effects going on here. It's very clear that that guy isn't there where that ship is. But for a TV show, it's not something I'm that fussed about, to be honest. Because it's the same here. The windows obviously look green screens as if there's something weird about them that they don't quite fit together on the same image. But having come from the 90s, I just don't care that much about graphics. I care far more about the plot and the characters, which is why I despise the entire show. I've been playing it as I've been talking, still no one's fired a shot apart from that chain gun. But Halsey realizes the big capital ship has gone down, and so what they need to do is bring the device to one of their ships. And Miranda's ship is closer, even though it pains Halsey to admit it. So they get the other two Spartans to pick up the artifact and carry it, because if Master Chief touched it, he'd probably start having flashbacks to the first time he jerked off or something. And the fact they just picked it up and moved it out without a second thought proves that they could have done that at any time. But instead, even though they knew it transmitted a signal across space to something, they still decided they were going to wait around for hours or days for the Covenant to travel from Madrigal to their planet while they did nothing. Nothing seems to have changed from the moment they shattered the crystal to when the Covenant arrived. So I'm not sure if they just arrived there instantaneously and teleported across the universe, or whether there is actually a gap of hours and days. But the thing is, I'm not sure why I'm trying to think it through, because the writers certainly didn't. And as Master Chief walks out, he gets given an AR from another soldier, because for some reason, none of these Spartans carry weapons. I'm sure I've seen military in their basic training, where they get told that your firearm should be within one arm's distance with you at all times. And yet the most advanced military units in the universe, nah, we'll just forget our guns, thanks, that'll be fine. If the Covenant come up, we'll just get one from somewhere. So at this point, these Spartans don't have any guns. This moment is the first time a soldier fires his gun. Only person that seems to have brought their firearm to the entire battle is the sniper. And although they fire a lot of shots, they don't seem to actually get anything done with it. Suddenly, the other Spartans have guns. Don't know where it came from, I can only assume they got them out of the truck. But what we have next is admittedly a cool scene. You've got this very cool shot of the sniper on a rock, you've got the Spartans running in front of the truck, and the truck blaring with the chain gun on the top. And they just yeet themselves off into the distance with the Spartan armor keeping pace with the car. Then a ship appear, drop pods coming down, and it's the first time we see any alien which isn't a Covenant elite. And I know a lot of people asked for these in earlier episodes, and there was some talk about, well, maybe they just didn't render them because they were too expensive to do more than one type of alien. But if they've already got the models, then it does beg the question why they weren't in the first episode as well. But what gets me is Cortana's commentary, as she's literally telling him step by step what to do, as if he's not a soldier and knows. She even tells him when to switch weapons. Although I do despise how she calls his AR his secondary when he was using his pistol. And I understand about game balance, but when it comes to a TV show, visuals matter more than random game balance. And an AR should be more powerful in a TV show than a pistol. And if it isn't, then you do need some kind of in-law reason why said to the audience. And Master Chief goes, I know how the game is played, Cortana. It's like, come on, dude. You can't. There is such a thing as being too on the nose. We've got everything going on. There's shots, explosions, aliens are hijacking the actual car itself. Only for Master Chief to hijack it back, and throughout the entire thing, there's game reference after game reference. This would be a thumbnail if there was actually any room left to put any text. I also hate this front camera view, which is supposed to be him in his helmet. We just don't need to see his face when he's in his helmet. It's pointless. Alright, so we can see his expressions. Yeah, because, this was vital. But he regroups with the Spartans and they all get in the car. Now, I do think the show realizes that the graphics aren't very good because every single frame of this is blurred. It's so difficult for me to actually pause anywhere and it not be blurred. And this has this weird side effect. Because as you can see here, everything is blurred except the CG, so you end up with this incredibly sharp shield, which stands out as fake compared to everything else which is blurred. And it makes it look really awkward. But the planes start doing bombing runs on the UNSC ground ships, because as I said, they're sitting ducks. But we got the sniper shooting things, even though we've never seen a lander shot yet, and this ship starts dropping off ground troops, despite the fact that surely it's got weapons. Why doesn't it just start firing torpedoes at all of them first? I don't understand. The UNSC seems to have zero way of actually shooting anything in the air. I don't know why we're sending in alien infantry. Although, to be fair, the UNSC infantry also seems to be awful, and they all start dying to one dude. This guy goes on a complete rampage, takes down about 7 people, only to die to the sniper. It was at this point I realized why the UNSC loves their Spartans. It's because it's their only troops which actually does anything at all. So this big general guy is on the minigun, and there's all these aliens slaughtering his troops, which he could shoot and save his troops' life. But instead, he decides to shoot this ship, and the bullets just bounce off it doing absolutely nothing, but he still continues to fire at it. Military general, check. Terrible strategy, check. I honestly have no idea how the UNSC has survived this long. So Master Chief's driving along in the car, and he's getting bombarded from the ships above, and they all miss because his plot armor is impenetrable. And because they have no AA at all, the Spartans are shooting their pistols at the flying aircraft. I wish I was making this up. Halsey sees the other woman in STEM's ship blow up, and for some reason seems to care. I actually have no idea why, because until this point, she never has before. And she sees Miranda limping along with that one guy that she pulled out the ship, because she didn't care about any of the others, I don't know. And runs out after her, risking her own life. Even as explosions are going off all around them, and it's almost certain death to go out there. And when one of the explosions goes over, Miranda falls to the ground, and you're like, oh, finally, maybe this is the end of another character. Honestly, at this point, I'm just wishing it was like Game of Thrones, and all of the major characters did start popping the clogs every single episode. Because quite frankly, I can't stand any of them. But instead, you've got Halsey, who just starts yeeting herself across the open ground towards them, and picks them up. And if you're going to have a moment like this, you actually have to earn it. You have to do something. She has to have some kind of change of personality, because she didn't care about her at all for the other 5 episodes. And then in the last minutes of this, suddenly she cares enough to risk her life for her. And we have no idea why. There's no reasoning why. There's no explanation why. She just does it randomly in the middle of battle. It's completely out of character. And you actually have to explain something when it's out of character. But what we get is Spartan Sniper Woman just taking blast after blast from the aliens. And we get a first-person HUD view, at least it's not staring at her face from the front, and her shields go down. Clearly I spoke too soon, because now we've got to see inside her face again for some reason. At least at this point, we know it's Gun Oil Gunk Woman. And she can't handle it. She took that chip out of her back, and now she's just getting emotionally overwhelmed. So before, the show tried to tell us, oh no, it's really bad because we've got double standards for men and women. Because men, when they have their emotions, they act like they can do it. Whereas the moment a woman starts to feel emotions, suddenly she gets punished by the men. And as it turns out, it was completely and utterly justified. I'm not sure this show is sending the message it thinks it's sending. And she's just standing there, getting absolutely annihilated and shot, and doesn't even try and move, doesn't try and take cover. Honestly, it's like one of my random teammates in Warzone. I'm just gonna stand out here until I die. I'm just like, are you gonna try and make it to cover? No, you're just gonna sit there. Right. But then, to the show's credit, she stands up, and you think, this is gonna be a comeback moment, isn't it? This is gonna be when she masters her emotions and takes over the world. Instead, she gets blown up and yeeted across the room and just smashes into the ground. Oh, looks like we're not getting that comeback moment, eh? Either way, Master Chief sees her, and he gets very, very worried. Cortana starts screaming at him to stay on mission because she doesn't care about anyone but herself. But Master Chief decides, no, I'm just going to yeet myself off a mountain and try and save her life. He doesn't seem to have any weapon on him at this point. I don't know what happened to his AR. It's not on his back. Halsey's screaming at him to stay on mission, and he's like, no, I really need to jump off this cliff. That sounds like a great idea. And off he goes. But then he lands on a Covenant ship. That was lucky. Meanwhile, the Spartans continue up to the other ship. Unfortunately, another ship crashes and smashes into the car, and that gets knocked over the side as well. So everything's gone to hell. It's almost like when you set up a military base, you should actually have some kind of anti-air defense against the spaceships. because how else are people going to arrive on your planet? But Master Chief's hanging onto the ship and realizes he can guide it by pulling down the wings. Unfortunately, he can only fly one direction with this. Meanwhile, Gun Oil Gunk Woman is in the fetal position, just getting pounded by aliens on all sides. So to save her, Master Chief flies the ship into another ship, and he just crashes face first into it, and then that hits the ground and blows up everything around him. And you're like, he's gotta be dead. There's no way. If I did that in the games, I don't think I'd survive. Unfortunately, Gun Oil Gunk Woman did, alongside her crimes against fashion. Apparently, Master Chief can survive that kind of crash without even, like, a scratch, which basically means at this point he shouldn't struggle against anything for the rest of the series. Although what follows next is pretty cool, as all the aliens stand up as well. At this point, I don't know how any of them survived, but apparently everything did. Unfortunately, we also get to see his incredibly expressive face again for absolutely no reason, because it's the same expression he always wears. And he just goes on a rampage, yeets his pistol at someone's face, picks up a shotgun and just starts blasting everything. He basically single-handedly cuts his way through the entire force, and I have to say it's pretty cool. He's using alien weapons, and I think this is basically what the first episode fight should have been. Because even at the end he goes and fights an elite hand-to-hand, and as he gets it on the ground just starts pounding its face for far too long. And I have to say, this is at least a second expression from him, which is a new experience for me. And he's just completely lost it, smashing his boot into the guy's face. But he realizes, I ditched the artifact, and the Covenant are coming for it. And they drop Nemesis? I don't know. Either way, it turns out Master Chief getting hit by a hammer does a lot more damage than him crashing one spaceship into another spaceship. Consistency, not the show's strong point. I do like how banged up his suit is at this point as well, just covered in gunk. Which, let's face it, if that woman sees it, she'll probably just put it in her hair. Master Chief likes Cortana. I'm gonna need a gun. And Cortana says, I'm not sure that'll help. Yeah, because that's what you need from a voice in your head. Doubt. Now, somehow this guy sort of telekinetically pulls the device into his hand. I don't know how he did that. And Master Chief picks up a battle rifle that was on the ground next to his right knee. Quite frankly, I don't know why he needed to ask Cortana where the nearest gun was when it's on his knee. But either way, Master Chief shoots the guy, and the guy just flies up into his spaceship and flies away. And I don't know if the gun's meant to be able to penetrate that armor, but whatever it is, it can't. And Halsey realizes she's about to get fired. But this is weird, because the Covenant woman says, make it look good. And then she gets fired out of the pod, so I'm like, what, are you going to pretend you were some kind of hostage? So do you mean they're going to beat you up a bit, give you some bruises to make it look like you've actually been mistreated on the ship? Because that would be the smart thing to do, and the standard thing, which we've seen in multiple movies in the past. But instead, they start, like, firing torpedoes at the drop pod, and miss. So Master Chief goes over there, with a weapon, and she's fine. So I don't know what make it good means. I assume they meant make it look good with the torpedoes, but the torpedoes missed. And I'd hope that spaceships had better targeting in the future than were able to miss a drop pod, which is static on the ground. The least they could have done is given her a black eye. But either way, Master Chief seems to think that she's not a threat and lowers his weapon and just starts staring up into space. And then drops the weapon, despite the fact that there's a potential threat on the ground where he's just dropped the weapon. And then he takes his helmet off in front of the potential threat, which is now next to the weapon that he's dropped. And he's also not paying attention to her, so she could easily just shoot him in the face. Worst soldier ever, with one expression. Because we briefly got a second one, but that was far too much effort, so now we're back to the default. And it's over. It was 20 minutes shorter, presumably because the budget went on actually making an action sequence for once. And I have to say, unlike the first episode, I did actually like that action sequence. That action sequence is what I expect from a Halo show, and it's also what should be in every single Halo show, not just this one. The fact that the only bit which actually felt like Halo is also the rarest part of the series is an incredibly bad thing, and all it does is exemplify how awful everything else about the show is. There's not a single character in this show which I actually like. Apart from that other big Spartan who had one scene in this, so unfortunately he's the smallest part in the show as well. The writing is awful. The political intrigue that they try to add is about the level of a 2-year-old, and Quan's entire storyline should still have been cut, as I've said every single episode, except now, for some reason, she can take down a Spartan with a stick that couldn't even take down people at a funeral before. In this, we saw Spartan armor being able to survive a spaceship crashing into another spaceship, but that guy's armor can't even survive an electric cattle prod. And I can understand some people aren't going to like that last action sequence because, yes, there was actually very poor visual effects for what the budget is and terrible green screen effects in there, but that's just not a big deal to me, and it's not what I value in that kind of thing. Especially when at this point I've sat through so much of this boring show, I'm just glad something happened for once. But its issue is, it does show how awful everything else is. We've sat through so many episodes where nothing happened at all, some of the most boring television of my life, and even in this, which I think is the best episode so far, the other 3/4 of the episode was still trash. The characters act like something out of a high school drama, not a military unit who are all supposed to be in control of themselves, and yet either don't have basic strategy, or they're not professional, or they don't have control of their emotions. It's all a huge, huge mess. For instance, the very idea that you think you can keep a secret from Master Chief when you've implanted something in his head which has access to every single record the UNSC actually has, and yet coincidentally has no records on him or any other Spartan. When you get to that level, the Gap becomes suspicious by its absence because you've given him access to everything else. And I don't know why you've given him access to everything else, because he's simply a grunt. He's a soldier. The army is renowned for compartmentalizing information on a need-to-know basis, not giving one of their soldiers access to every single record the UNSC has ever had. All in all, the plot is bewildering, the characters are completely insufferable, and I despise all of them, and I find myself rooting for the Covenant in all the fights, like they're the good guys. It's like, yeah, there's an explosion just hit a guy. Hopefully he won't get up. Yet unfortunately these characters also have the thickest plot armor known to man, and not a single one of them seems to be in any risk at all, even when their spaceship blows up. And that's if their character even stays as the same person in the same episode, because as we saw, Halsey running out to save the other scientist against her own life when she's absolutely despised her for 5 entire episodes so far, without any reason, is just terrible storytelling. Your characters can be basically good, bad, or grey, but they should at least be consistent in their fundamental principles and how they act. The audience should be able to predict how a character would respond based on their behaviour in previous episodes, and if they can't, there should be a reason why something has changed, and there just isn't. And that's not the audience's fault, that is solely down to the writing, and I think it's a major mistake. So all in all, I think this episode is the best one, but only because of the action sequence, because it was the best of any of the previous episodes. That was the only bit that really felt like Halo, or at least gave me what I would want from a Halo series, given that I don't know that much about the games. If you took that action sequence out of the episode, you'd just be left with another terrible episode, and that action sequence was only like 10 minutes out of a 40-minute show. But now I do think 40 minutes is a far better time for these episodes, simply because I don't think the writers can actually maintain an idea for 60 minutes. That doesn't seem to be something they're talented enough to do. But I do think the action sequence does lift up the episode, especially as it's at the end. You come away feeling better about the episode than I did with any of the others. Because many of the others, by this time, I just couldn't stand it, and I wanted everything to be over. But the more I think about it, the action sequence might be good, not be so much because of the explosions, but because none of the characters actually had much time to exist. They were so busy shooting and getting exploded and running around that they didn't get to talk. And that's a big problem for this series, that the quality of your episodes is dragged down the moment any of your characters open their mouths. So yes, this episode beat the others, but only because the quality bar of those was oh so low to begin with, as it actually has all of the same problems that they do as well. And I can't help but thinking, if you actually look at how far the plot has come in this episode, it actually didn't move along at all. We started with an artifact, by the end we didn't have an artifact, and that's it. Every episode moves the grand plot along at an absolute crawl. At this point, it's going slower than Lost. And so while I thought it was decent, I don't think it's going to help the show, because I actually don't think there's going to be that many people left watching the show by this point to even judge it. And even then, it was 10 minutes out of a 40-minute episode, out of a 5-episode series. I don't think it's enough to actually change my opinion of the show, because quite frankly, to do that, you'd have to change every character in the show as well. So overall, I enjoyed the ending, hated the rest, and it's not enough to move my opinion of the series at all a single jot. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like the video, press like, subscribe, more videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.